So my brown turkey fig leaves are already falling completely off of it. I believe I could start taking some cuttings on it. My other ones that I planted, man, some of these varieties, the first year growth I've got them is just absolutely amazing. I got some of them 9-10 foot tall. And I got them on some 15 mil drip tape, and been every couple weeks or so I let it run overnight and kind of soak them in good. But these are two varieties I just planted this year and I want to share with you. Now some of these have been gnawed on a little bit, but they still in pretty good shape. So these right here, this is the LSU Tiger.
The striped one's a tiger.
Yeah.
Versus the name Tiger, I guess.
No, this big ones here is
a golds.
No, this is a variety called Canadria.
Oh, really?
And what's interesting to me is how some of these varieties have more of a, they kind of bush out more, some of them just grow straight up tall. Of all the varieties I planted, I think I only got one of these trees, but I'm gonna take some cuttings and plant some more. Of all the varieties I planted, I think the Canadria has the best looking plant.
Is it grows straight up, not in a bush, but grows more straight up?
No, I mean it just put on more foliage. It just looks like a more healthier. It's not. I have some that are just.
Well, the LSU
like
Gold. The reason I say that, the LSU Gold is one that grows pretty straight up, like a big tree.
Yeah, I got one of those, and it does that. This Canadria spreads out a little bit more, so I figured we'd try that one first. That's pretty big, pretty good sized fig right there.
It is.
A little bigger than a golf ball.
So what?
I haven't. This is my first one I've tried.
Oh, excuse me.
I had a couple that the bugs and birds got to before I could get to them. Now it's not as dark red as some of them are.
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
I've heard good things about this variety.
I'm gonna have to get me one of these. I don't have one of those.
Canadria.
Canadria? Spell it.
C-O-N-A-D-R-I-A.
That's a nice fig.
Now I put these in the fridge overnight. They got a little chill to them. Yeah, you ain't got to eat many of them right here and you'll be filled up. It's not got the real strong berry citrusy notes to it, but it's really, really sweet.
More of a honey profile to me, although the coloring does not lend itself to the honey profile. Most of the time they're a lighter color.
Yeah.
But if I had to classify it, I'd say that was honey there.
Either way, it's a winner.
Yes, it is. Let's talk about these tigers a minute. Man, it's a very unusual color in there.
You got any of these?
I do not have any of these.
I haven't tried any of these either. Well, I may have snuck one yesterday. I don't remember.
I'm going to try this one. I like to get some of the peeling off of it for my very first try of the fig.
Well, I like to open it up so everybody sees. That's a lot darker fig right there.
Yep.
Now, Canadria was. But the outside appearance on these is pretty.
More of a berry flavor.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. With a little twang on the end of it.
Yep.
Anyway, I really enjoyed trying all these different fig varieties this year, and
here's some of mine.
I'm gonna keep planting.
And these are unnamed varieties, but these are some of the improved ones. And I've got most of these dark ones. However, one of these is a honey, and I don't know which one it is. It's not that one. That's a berry. Look how red it is. I know that's a berry type fig.
Man, you don't know what this one's called?
That might be a Mahindra. I don't know. Mahindra?
Mahindra? That's a tractor. That ain't a fig. The skin on this one's a lot different than the other.
Oh, no, I should say there's that honey, but that ain't it.
That was pretty good. I don't think I like it as good as the Tiger. It's pretty good though. I don't know if you was blindfolded, if you could really tell them apart.
I could on that first one.
Which, that Canadria?
Oh, yeah, that was.
Yeah, that's a winner. The problem is, well, it's gone now, I can't show you. Them ones that get big old figs, it's kind of like waiting on a tomato to ripen and waiting on a green bell pepper to turn red. There's a lot that can happen to it, and as they get bigger and bigger, the birds and the bugs that get to them.
I walk by mine every day and check them.
Yeah, I don't walk. Mine's are on the back side of my property, so I don't walk them every day. I walk them about a couple times a week.
Mine are on the way to the house, and I walk by them every afternoon, and I'll I do a field test and see how soft they are, and that's the reason. That's how I tell if they're ready to eat or not.
Yeah. I've had several of them Canadrias be eat up before I could get a good one, but they certainly
The
work
Tiger
well.
does have something on the end I've not tasted before.
Yeah, it's something a little different.
Yeah.
Why are you peeling them for?
I don't know why. I just do that.
Anyway, fig's still coming in good. That's the great thing about these varieties. They just keep making and making. I got one called, this is a real tall, straight variety called Mary Lane Seedless, and they're loaded with figs. They're smaller, but I'm just waiting on them to turn. I hadn't tried those yet.
It's a well-known variety. I don't have one of them, but I've seen it a lot.
You've heard of it?
I've heard of it.
So, usually we'd like to have transplants in the ground by now, but we don't. But we ain't gonna be far off. If you pull that one out there that you got, I got to be careful right here.
You do have to be careful. Let me help you a little bit.
Okay.
You through with this?
Well,
I guess so.
if you say I am. All right. So this, whoa, that one's heavy. So that one there is that tray of plethora onions that we started on the show.
Yeah.
I did those on the show, and I'm gonna sacrifice one for the sake of this. Now, with these onions, it ain't like the other transplants where you're really worried about the cell staying together, the soil staying together. It's not like these cabbages where you want that block to stay consistent. That's not a huge concern with these onions. And what I'll do, when these probably about a week or so off, one more fertilization, what I'll do is I don't take the tray with me to the field, and I'll show this in a video. I got me one of them little mini tub trucks, and I'll just go through here, and I'll yank them all out, put them in a little bucket, and then scoot along the row and plant them. But with these, I'm not worried that I lost some of that seed starting mix there. Ain't a big deal.
No, but within a week's time, you'd be surprised how that will root into the cell there. But they'll have a lot better root system just within a week. We'll hit it one more time with some fertilizer.
That's pretty right there, and real good germinate. All these hybrid onions we've added, we've got excellent germination in our greenhouse.
So let's just think back for a minute and try to recall from how old are these?
I think my best estimations are about 4 weeks old, 4 or 5 weeks old.
So you hinted to the fact not too long ago that you thought you could grow them off a lot quicker in the cell than you can in the ground, and that just goes to prove that you're just about in half the amount of time in a tray as what you would be in the ground.
Yeah, controlled conditions, more even watering, the ability to fertilize them easier.
6 weeks, you could easily grow off onion transplant in 6 weeks.
Oh yeah. We could probably push these a little harder, because you could put these in the ground right now, and it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt nothing. I put some in the ground mid-October last year, and the way I've done it is I didn't start all mine at one time. I've been kind of every week I started me a tray. I had about 8 different varieties I wanted to trial, and so I just start me a different tray every week or so. That way I ain't got to plant them all at one time. I can just put me one row of drip in, plant me one row next week, plant me a nerd.
So somebody called the other day and asked me, when do I start fertilizing my onions? When that onion first comes up, this leaf here is bent over, and it'll come up and it'll unfold there.
It's stuck in the dirt, and then it kind of fling up.
It's got to fling itself over. Flig, that's a new word. Anyhow, when you see that onion come up and it's still folded and it's just before fixing to flig, it's time to start fertilizing.
That's right. And I tell you folks from experience, that right there is going to take off in the ground a lot quicker than an onion plant that's been sitting in a hardware store or been sitting in a mailbox or in the UPS truck for a while, that's been trimmed off and everything. That right there is going to go.
Over the years, I've known this, but the quickest you can get an onion transplanted, they look a whole lot better, a whole lot quicker. If them things have stressed out, man, it takes them a long time to recover. If they're freshly dug or freshly pulled from the tray, and you put them in the ground, you hardly even see any transplant shock.
And that makes sense. I mean, it don't take a rocket scientist to figure that, but a lot of people don't think about that. And a lot of people have never thought about doing onions this way just because you've always bought plants. And we had always bought plants until a year or so ago when we started doing it this way. and we noticed a big difference.
I would say, I see 2 spots in there. I'd say you probably run around 98 to 99% germination.
Onions, the seeds are so light, sometimes a few of them will wash out on you if you ain't careful when you first water them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, nothing wrong with that. Those other ones I got going, some of those, the Cougar, the Duster, all those came up really, really good.
You gonna be able to share any of these with me, or?
Yeah.
You think so?
I'm not even so sure. Been going back and forth in my mind. I always have done the double rows of onions on the drip tape, and I'm still going to put them on drip, but I'm almost considering not doing a double row this year and just doing single rows. I don't need as many, we ain't selling them anymore. Look at there.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day.
Daggum squash bug. Now, how did he get in here?
He piggybacked.
He gone now.
So I'm going to plant mine on 24-inch rows.
I've done that. I didn't like it as much because when they get up and get going, and sometimes in the later stages of the onion, you have to, Manuel have to get out there. You know Manuel?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Manuel labor, and get out there with that short single tine and work around them. And it just didn't give me room between the rows to step and put my feet. So I'm going back to 3 feet.
On onions?
You can do 2 feet. When I do them double rows, I mean, they tight. It just depends on how tight you want them. I like to leave myself a little room to walk betwixt them.
Yeah, I tiptoe into mine. Just kind of talk to
You
them.
dance around.
Yeah.
So right here, we got. You can put them down. If you leave, they pretty. Just leave them up here.
Making a mess, getting all over me.
So here we got some cabbage, and now I had a fella. I don't remember his name, and he may watch the show, he may not. Earlier in the season, tell me he was having trouble with the stonehead cabbage. Maybe he had done bought 2 packs of it or something or other and couldn't get it to come up. And I said, well, I ain't heard anything from anybody else. I said, I'll be glad to send you some more, but I don't think it's a seed. And I'm going to start me some pretty here soon. So I've got 5 varieties here: Early Dutch, Bobcat, Red Jewel, Cherries, and Stonehead. And as you can see, we ain't lacking on germination on really any of them. So there's 9 times 4, there's 36 there, and maybe 1 or 2 cells per one. So good germination on all this. And I said that to say this: I'm always willing, if our seeds aren't doing what they're supposed to do, to send people more seeds or whatever. But a lot of times for me, it's important about addressing the problem, because if I can tell that it ain't the seeds, then we need to figure out what's going on, because sending you more seeds isn't necessarily going to fix it.
When I have those questions, those phone calls, people have problems, I always want to go into a conversation with them and talk about the process that they use, whether it be fertilization, injector, whatever it is, and find out the way they use it, because you're exactly right. Our goal is to help you be successful. And even though we give you a different pack of seed, if you're doing something wrong, you're going to have the same outcome. So we try to address the process you use and see if we can see something there. Just like with irrigation, a lot of times we'll see that. They may have done something wrong, may have had the wrong pressure or whatever. If we can address that problem, then it helps people be successful. Sending you a replacement product is not an issue. We don't mind doing that at all. We guarantee our seeds 100%. But we can find out what the problem is. That's better for you and I.
So these here ain't quite, let me get one of the bigger ones I can show folks. These here ain't quite ready. They probably need 2 more weeks.
It's going to be close.
As you can see that cell there, it ain't quite tightly wrapped as we like it, to where we can tug on that stem and pull it out of there. But we got pretty good root development there, and we getting mighty close.
Another thing to talk about on these 162 trays, a 162 tray holds a lot of plants, 162 to be exact.
Yeah.
But you don't have to plant them all in one variety. You could do what the little Trav did right here and plant different things there. Now you could have done this with broccoli and cauliflower.
I did do that with the broccoli and cauliflower. And since I'm not market farming anymore, I'm doing a lot more trial stuff. Whereas in the past, I would have did a whole flat of just a home run variety, I know, because I had different intentions when I was market farming. Now, I'm just going to plant me probably just 2 rows amongst all these. I'll probably have some plants left over. We'll give them away to some friends and stuff. But I'm just going to plant me probably 2 or 3 rows of cabbage and just put a few in each row, and that way I can compare them.
So you could take this 162 tray and pretty much plant all your cold crops in there. Heck, you could have mixed it up with some lettuce.
Yeah, if you was just going to grow one variety of cabbage, you could have did cabbage here, broccoli here, cauliflower here, kohlrabi here, Brussels sprouts here. And for a small 20 by 20 garden, boom, boom, you got all your plants right there in a pretty small footprint.
It does help, though, to grow. If you can put all your cold crops, such as this, in one flat, it does make it a little bit better because they grow off more consistent. Lettuce would grow off a little bit quicker than this would have. And, you know, put them all in there of the same family, they grow off about the same and look better.
Yeah, I like to do all my lettuce in one. I got to keep my onions separate because they take longer to germinate than these do. I mean, you got to think these onions were planted two weeks ahead of these guys here. I even did one tray just with herbs, and they're a little slower to germinate, and that worked out all right. So yeah, you kind of give it a little thought. You don't want to put something in here that's going to kind of out-compete as far as space is. You want to keep good airflow between these plants.
If I did have to put lettuce or something else on, I would put it on the end so I could work them out a little bit easier.
You could do that. You could do that. All right, all right, all right. So, won't be long. We're behind, but we ain't too far behind.
No, we ain't.
Ain't too far behind. I got a wet mess up here.
Yeah, I do too.
What else to talk about? I want to mention this a little bit, and I hope this don't ruffle any feathers. So, that time of year, you get a lot of people asking about seed catalog this, catalog this. Can I get a catalog? And we stopped doing a catalog about 2 years ago. And the reason we stopped is simply from a dollars and cents perspective. Catalogs are not near as effective as they used to be.
Well, not only that, but the seed industry changes so quick. You know, you have to plan months in advance to do a catalog. You have it printed, you send it out, and that, you know, that information in there could be 3 or 4 months old easily by the time person gets a catalog. Seed industry changes so quick with inventory, with new varieties, and being able to do it online, we're able to give you the latest, greatest information just that quick.
Yeah, and I want to say this, and I don't want to make anybody feel bad, the people out there that insist on having a catalog. But so we talk to a lot of companies in our industry, and I can tell you from talking to other people, talking to the experts, the success rate on catalogs is kind of rapidly going down. We stopped ours. You've seen other companies like Stark Brothers. They don't do a catalog anymore. And this may shock some people, but the standard return rate on catalogs is around 2 to, if you get up there around 5%, that's considered home run. So what that means, folks, is for every 100 catalogs that are mailed, only 2 to 5 of those people are actually ever placing the order. Now, you don't have to be a Harvard graduate to do the math on that and realize it's hard to come out when you're spending, it costs about $1 to print and mail a catalog. You know, you got $100 mailing 100 catalogs and you're only getting 2 to 5 orders off of it.
And paper continues to go way up in price, paper for the catalog. And it takes a lot of paper to send out a bunch of catalogs, so it's environmentally friendly not to be sending out a catalog.
Right, so I'm not trying to guilt trip the hardcore people that like a catalog. I'm not trying to guilt trip you here, but I'm saying that if you can go without a catalog, you're going a long way to helping companies that you like succeed long term, and you're also helping out the environment. Because I can tell you a lot of these older companies, they don't still send catalogs because it's making them a ton of money. They still send catalogs because they feel like they have to. Because a lot of people say they got to have it. So not making anybody feel guilty, but just wanting to kind of enlighten people on that and where the trend is going as far as catalogs.
I'll make this prediction. I'll say 10 years from now, there will not be any seed catalogs.
10 years, I can think of 1 or 2 that I'd say, yeah, it's close. It's going to be, you probably count them on one hand in 10 years.
Yeah.
So just get ready for that, folks, and understand that it's not done as a disservice to anyone. It's done for the health of the business and also environmental concerns.
Heck yeah.
What else? We had a lot of people complaining last week
Complaining.
about two things. One was the ads on our videos. And so we used to be able to control those ads in the middle of the videos. YouTube has taken over that. And depending on the channel, it even seems depending on the person watching it, they'll put a different amount of ads in there. Some people say they saw hardly any. Some people say they saw a bunch. Unfortunately, I don't have any control over that. I would say if the ads are just driving you crazy, I know YouTube does have a premium feature. I don't think it's that expensive, maybe $10 a month.
I just skip over them when I can.
And no, we don't control that. We're not trying to purposely annoy anybody, and I do apologize.
Or we're not putting a particular type of political ad in your video because we don't care, or nor do we have control over it.
That's right. The other thing people got upset about is me talking about football last week.
They got upset about it?
Yeah, they said they didn't watch this show to hear about football.
Well, you know, I have to agree with them about that.
Yeah.
I don't watch football. I could care less for it myself. Now, I may watch 1 or 2 championship games a year. It really didn't interest me a whole lot.
Well,
and I get that with people. They're watching the gardening show. They're not watching the football show.
Yeah, but we have a lot.
Football is strong in the South. I get you there.
Yeah. I think unless you're from this area, it's hard to, it's just different down here.
But for you folks out there that don't care for football, you and I are in the same boat.
So I'll try to keep it at a minimum.
Yeah.
We'll try to respect everybody's wishes there.
And one other thing and this pains me to bring this up. This is very tough on me, but I know one particular person email, and I'm getting some things from the females. From our female audience out there, I'm getting it's making me uncomfortable, to be honest with you. I got one email, he says his girlfriend thought I was a stallion.
A stallion?
Stallion.
Wow, that's quite an overstatement.
So, you know, I told him, he said he's going to carry it to the eye doctor. I said, don't do it. Girl's got good taste. Just tell her to calm down a little bit, take long, deep breaths when she's watching the show, try to contain herself. But I'm starting to get a lot of females making advances toward me, I guess is the way to say it. And it's caused me a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm dealing with it the best I can.
Well.
And it seems to be the younger girls, the 20 to 35-year-olds, they can't help themselves.
Okay.
So we're seeing a lot of that, but we'll do what we can with it.
I'm going to leave that alone. The last thing I want to mention before we get into tonight's show, Stallion. Yeah. This is a question we get asked a lot. Is people will ask with regards to a particular variety, will this grow? And some of them are real general with it. Will this grow in the Pacific Northwest? We have people say, will this grow in Indiana? And some people will say, will this grow in my county in Kentucky? And for the most part, what I tell people is that most of the crops and the varieties you're going to grow are not necessarily zone specific. There are a few exceptions to that with things like onions, and we do have some varieties that are more heat tolerant or disease tolerant than others, but for the most part you can grow any variety anywhere you want to, with the exception of things like onions.
I get that question a lot too, and I understand it, and this is the answer that I normally give. Variety-wise, they're all pretty much the same, with exceptions. You got some that may be more heat tolerant or more cold tolerant. So will a broccoli grow in my area? Yes, it will, but it's according to what season you're going to grow it in. You may just want to switch up to the variety. Example of that would be our green magic broccoli. We know it is more heat tolerant than most of the other varieties we got.
But you can grow it up north just as good as you can grow it down.
But if I'm growing it late in the spring or early in the fall, I may want to go with a more heat tolerant variety. So, and all that is on the description of of our seeds on the website, so you can read that and kind of get an understanding. And you want to pay attention to when you're planting that, not necessarily if I can grow that particular plant where I live, but when am I planting it?
Take, for instance, our owl squash. Those seeds came from the Pacific Northwest. Yep. Similar zone, but a completely different climate, pretty much, than we have down here. Completely different disease pressure, all that stuff. And those seeds did exceptionally well down here.
They had an exception well grower growing them.
Yeah, that too. But so I say that to say, if you guys would like this would be a good future show topic, I think, for us to go through those few crops that the regionality is going to matter, and then kind of talk about the ones where it's really not going to matter. You can.
Well, example of that, I had somebody the other day talking about beets. You know, can I grow beets in Louisiana? I said, sure. He said, well, which is the best beet to grow? Any of them.
Yeah.
It didn't really matter.
Right, there's not a Louisiana beet variety.
It's a personal preference on which one you like. So I told him what my favorite was and kind of went from there.
Right. Anyway, if you'd like to see a show on that, let us know in the comments below. So this week, as I think we promised this last week, this week we're going to do a show on fertigation. Now, last week we mentioned that we got these back in stock. Let me get this up here. Our new fertilizer injector. Got these in stock. And a real simple, easy setup to use. I had a guy call earlier. He was putting in some strawberries, 8 to 1,600 foot rows. He had never used drip before and wanted to know what he needed. And I told him, all you need is a water hose, that drip kit. And he wanted to be able to fertilize. And I said, you know, you'll be able to go to town with that. So what I want to talk about today is the concept of fertigation itself. Why, you know, some people may think, oh, this is just a way for you to sell a fertilizer injector or whatever, but there's a lot of science behind this fertigation process. And what we try to do a lot of times with our products is we try to take things that work on a real large scale and kind of dumb them down a little bit for us and for everybody else, so that it's easy to use on a small backyard garden scale. Because commercial farmers, they get a lot of bad rap, but a lot of the techniques they use are really, really effective. And if we can figure out a way to make that work on a small scale, we can have some really good successes in our gardens.
Yeah, let me tell you kind of where all this started at. From the get-go, we had a lot of customers asking about some type of system to help them fertilize. Because I've been gardening for a long time and I knew there was really nothing out there. I mean, heck, take a 5-gallon bucket, some 10, 10, 10, and you take your hand and go down the side and side dress. We did that for years because we didn't have any other system to do it. So we had a lot of people asking, how do I gauge out, how do I use a system to meter out the fertilizer? So I actually spent probably a year and a half working on a system, a push fertilizer distributor, where you push it, put your granular fertilizer in it, and it meters it out and puts it next to the plant.
Side dresser.
Side dress. Built a couple of prototypes. Wasn't really happy with neither one, but still, you know, I was still on it pretty good. And we got to look around at what, as Trav mentioned, is what the bigger guys do, which we always look to and try to figure out if there's not a better way. And then we realized there were a better way than putting the granular fertilizer out with a fertilizer distributor like we used to do back in the day. And that's when we started leaning toward a drip. And once we understood and figured out how the drip irrigation worked, man, it was a no-brainer for me. I said, forget this. We're not going to go after this granular fertilizer side dresser anymore, because this has got to be the way to go. And the reason is, it is so much better. It's more environmentally friendly. I mean, we can go into several aspects, as we will touch on. But this right here, as far as the footprint of putting the fertilizer out and not wasting any, and being, you know, good on the plant, growing a lot better plant, it's just hands down better than the way we used to do it a long time ago.
Yeah, and side dressing still has its place. I'm not completely, you know, I still do a little bit of that. But as we're going to talk about today, this fills in some of the gaps, and we're going to talk about why. So let's talk about why to fertigate. And so we use the term fertigate. All we're talking about is fertilizing while we water.
Fertigation.
Yeah, fertigate, which can be done through a drip system. It can also be done overhead. We'll talk about some pluses and minuses on those. So why do we want to fertigate? The number one reason, and a lot of people might not have thought about this, it is the most cost-effective way to fertilize, whether you be on a real big scale or a small scale. When you're using granular fertilizer in your side dressing, you never get all that fertilizer to the plants.
Man, I used to see the stats on that, and I can't remember it, but it's, I would easily say you lose anywhere from 30 to 40% of it.
I did some research before the show, and I saw a lot of numbers out there. I even saw one that said you get up to 90% better uptake through an injection than you do a side dressing. And a lot of things go into play with this. Rain, you get a lot of runoff. If you have some rain, you're going to lose some nitrogen in there. I didn't know this was such a critical loss factor, but if you get real heavy rains, what happens is instead of running off somewhere, you get that nitrogen falls below the root zone. And so it's way down there because that rain's just pushing it down and pushing it down, and it can never be accessed by those plants because it's way below the root zone.
You know, the reality is the plant can only access or use so much of it at per given time anyway.
That's right, that's right. So with this, we don't get any loss to runoff, we don't get any loss to the deep soil layers. We're also, if we consider the fact that assuming a dry year, you side dress, to get that fertilizer activated, it's got to have water. And if you go in and overhead water it to try to activate it,
Yep.
you're going to use a lot more water than you would use with this. So this is also going to conserve water.
Yep, a lot
in
of
those situations. So you don't have to worry about using X amount of water to stimulate some granular fertilizer. So it's more cost effective. Point number 2, better timing. And this is a big one here. You put out that granular slow release fertilizer and it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It slow releases, which works good in some situations. But if you need a quick shot, go ahead.
The 20-20-20. I want to touch on, go ahead now.
So you're giving it, with the injection, you're giving the plant the fertilizer exactly when it needs it. You don't have to wait on rain or some long watering cycle to stimulate a granular or slow release fertilizer, and faster uptake is going to give you faster results.
A lot of your granular fertilizers will be one particular type of nitrogen, whether it be a urea, ammonia,
Or some organic source.
yeah, whatever. It can be several different kinds. Very rarely do we see a granular fertilizer that has several different types of nitrogen in there. The 20-20-20 that we like to put through our injector here, and this is one, some people may not know what the magic is behind this 20-20-20. I'm fixing to let you in on a little secret. The magic is the nitrogen in here, and I learned this years ago. The 20-20-20 has three different types of nitrogen. It has ammoniacal, it has nitrate, and it has urea. 3 different types of nitrogen that you very rarely or ever see in the granular fertilizer. Most granular fertilizers are one type of nitrogen. Plants respond to different type of nitrogen in different ways. A lot of these guys that's really growing these commercial guys that's growing these specialty crops, they even get it dialed in to what type of nitrogen they need at what stage in their life. But with this 20-20-20, what makes them plants pop so much is those 3 different types of nitrogen there that plant is taking up and reacting to each one of them a little differently. And that's what makes that plant look so good after you get through injecting it with that 20-20-20.
It's hot in here to me, I'm sweating. Stallion heat coming on. So we talked about being cost effective, talked about the timing. The next thing is less labor, and this is going to be applicable on a large scale and a small scale. It's just going to take you less time, less effort to do this than it is to go make a furrow, make a trench. Now, if you're going to heal your corn, you might as well side dress it because you're going to heal it anyway. But as far as repeated fertilizations, this is going to be real easy. You just pour your stuff in here, turn it on, you're ready to go.
You know, let's say this right here. If I got a spot, a 30 by 40 or 40 by 50 that needs fertilizing, I got to water it anyway. I got my drip system set up. I can honestly say within 5 or 10 minutes time, I can have this mixed set up.
Right. And with this one, as opposed to the old one, this one you leave under constant pressure, so you don't have, everything's already hooked up.
Under constant pressure.
Right, everything's already hooked up. Less labor, better timing, cost effective. The next one may not be a huge deal on a smaller scale, but definitely is on a larger scale. Less soil compaction. So you're not in there doing that side dressing, whether it be with a tractor or walking around there. It's less traffic on your soils, so less soil compaction if that is an issue for you. And this next one is a big one I don't think a lot of people think of. Less transplant shock.
You know, I've learned over the years that when I do a good transplant, and I got it on drip irrigation, let's take broccoli or cabbage or any of these for granted. As soon as I put them in the ground and get them on that drip, one of the first things I do is hit them with a light dose of fertilization.
Yep. Yep. And
makes a big difference.
I had in the past, I had been a little leery about that because you worry you're going to burn them. But I agree with you. I have done a little personal testing and found lighten the dose a little bit and throw it in there not long after you put them transplants in the ground, and it's almost zero transplant shock. They just take off and get going. So lots of benefits to fertigating there, and we mainly are talking about, or what we mainly do is fertigate through the drip system. Now you can overhead fertigate, but I only recommend doing that in very few instances. For instance, if I had a garden with fall crops out there with cabbage and broccoli and even onions and stuff, I think it would be pretty wasteful to run this through an overhead sprinkler to fertilize the entire plot, because you don't need to fertilize those spaces between those rows there.
Yeah, I have a little bit of trouble with fertilization overhead. I mean, it can be done. A lot of people do it. I mean, they use this same exact fertilizer injector on lawn systems. You can hook this up to your lawn with your underground irrigation system and inject through it. I got a little,
Watch yourself.
I got a little bit of an issue with that, and I'll tell you the reason why. It's just not real environmentally friendly. Whatever sidewalk you hit or whatever street you hit, that fertilizer is going to go directly to the wastewater. It's just a little wasteful. I mean, what if it puddled up and your cat or your dog drank some of it? There's a chance of some nitrate poisoning there. So I'm not a huge fan of it, although you can do it.
Yeah, so the only two instances where I recommend using it in any kind of overhead or hand watering system, if you've got a bunch of containers on your patio or something, you can have this hooked up and use it to hand water your containers or your
just like you would our brass hose siphon.
Right.
So you wouldn't need both.
Right. Or if you had you just got 2 or 3 raised beds, you want to hand water, it works perfect. The other instance where I use it overhead is sometimes, and I'll be doing this, sometimes do it before I plant the cover crop, sometimes as I'm watering it in, but I'll run some of our liquid fish, our fish and guano through here, through my overhead sprinkler, and it kind of stimulates that microbe activity with the cover crops. So that's the only situation where I really use it overhead. So we talked about overhead fertigation, which works just in a few instances well. Let's talk about drip fertigation in a little more detail. So this is what we do is what we call spoon feeding, or you'll see the more proper term used called microdosing. And this is where you're giving small amounts of nutrients at a more frequent basis to the plant. So instead of expecting a slow release to feed the plant throughout its entire life, you're giving it a little bit here and there. And I was reading some stuff, some of these commercial guys do it very, very frequent. In some instances every day or every other day or 3 or 4 times a week.
I've done a little experiment in the greenhouse with that, what you talk about. And what I did is every time I watered, I fertilized just a little bit. And I got real good results out of it. It's a little tricky figuring out your dosage there, so I ain't got that completely down pat yet. But that's not a bad strategy. I prefer to do it every week to 10 days is the way I've always done it. But if you get it figured out so you can do it every time you water, there's nothing wrong with it.
That's right. And on the commercial scale, just kind of give you an idea of what they do, and I replicate this a little bit in my garden. So what they do is a lot of times they'll put out fertilizer pre-plant, and they may side dress one time early as they're cultivating the crop. But they use the fertigation or the drip fertigation as a way to finish out the crops and give it, fertilizer right when they need it, right at the right time. Now, I personally have what I've been doing recently is, before I plant with my little FAD system, I put down some of our complete organic fertilizer, and that's kind of my pre-plant, and then I'll start feeding them with this once the plants get up and going. So I won't say it completely eliminate, but you don't have to do that. You could feed them just straight with this. I like that technique a little better.
And look, and we're going to go back to the compost thing for a minute. This, in conjunction with a good liberal application of good compost make you look like a hero.
Hero.
So this, I mean, if you got good compost, absolutely use it, but use this in conjunction with it, and with those two things there, man.
I was also reading some stuff, and it said that, no, it didn't say what the definition of slow, but we can take this in the relative terms. It said that slow injections are the best. So now, my plots are all roughly 1,000 square feet. And when I run this thing, it's running good. I'd say mine empties in 2 to 3 hours. And that's usually a good little watering cycle if I've got some nice grown plants out there. Corn, I'll water longer than that. But you want to do a nice slow injection. Even on this fast setting here, you're still getting a pretty good slow injection. What can happen if you're shooting it too fast, real fast, is you're going to get a lot more fertilizer at the end of the row than you will at the beginning of the row, because it's not going to equally distribute there in your drip lines.
Yeah.
So slow and easy does it. Now let's talk about, I didn't even bring one. Let's talk about the types of injectors real quick, because you can get a lot fancier than this if you want to.
You can spend as much money as you want to spend.
Or you can get simpler than this if you want to. So let's talk about the different versions here. So the first one, and like I said, I didn't bring one, but I meant to, would be like our brass siphon mixer. And it looks a lot kind of like this piece right here. This hooks on the spigot. You got a little tube that hangs down into a bucket. Water hose goes right here, and it just pulls that mixture up into your water supply. Now, that won't work with a drip system, because a drip system requires a pressurized tank. That works really good for hand watering, works really good for greenhouses.
As we was talking earlier, if you got just a few raised beds, or you got some containers, or you got a small greenhouse where you're running less than 50 feet of water hose, it works wonderful.
I would say it even works better with 25 feet of hose or
but
less.
50 is the max
right.
you can use.
But not going to work with a slow feed drip system.
Nope, never recommend it for a drip irrigation system.
Only for hand watering.
Yep.
With that. But it works great for hand watering. If you got a greenhouse, you got to have one of those.
And they're relatively cheap.
This unit right here is what is called a Venturi type injector. Now, the one caveat with this, and I will say this, I don't think it really matters in a home garden situation. It would pan out in a big, large-scale commercial situation, but in the gardens that most of us are dealing with, it's not going to matter. As your water runs, the dilution in this tank changes over time. So it starts off with a very heavy dilution, whatever you put in there, and it becomes less and less diluted. For instance, with that 20-20-20, when you first start running it through here, it's going to be dark blue, and as it empties, it's going to get lighter blue and lighter blue. Now, for some people, they get hung up on that, and that's an issue. And in a commercial situation, that might be an issue. In a home garden situation, it's not going to matter that much.
Nope. I can't overthink this thing. And the way this thing works, I tell this all the time, it's pretty daggone simple. Water shoots in here, pressurizes this tank, and then shoots it back out. It's just a simple siphon technique that goes through there. So if you've got a leak anywhere, it's not going to work correctly. But if you got it tight, this thing works pretty good, and it works simple. And if you ever have any problems, if you just sit back in your rocking chair and think about the way it works, it's a no-brainer.
Right. Now, you can get fancier than this, like we mentioned, and there are ones that are called positive displacement injectors, and one of the popular names out there is what they call dosatron. Mm-hmm. And I think my buddy James George has got one of these. Of course, he's got a pretty big operation. What those do is they dose. It's like a little dropper almost, I think is how it works, and it gives the same dilution throughout the time it's running. Now, those require a good bit more setup, irrigation pipes and stuff, and they're not really realistic or necessary for a small backyard garden.
No, but if you're just doing 10 acres, what it would do,
I would say even 5 acres.
It'd be 5 acres. It causes that whole 5 acres to get the same amount of fertilizer.
Yeah. So on a larger scale, that's the way to go. Those are going to cost you more, and the setup's going to be a little more custom. For a home garden situation, this right here, because it's just so plug and play, is your best way to go.
Yep.
Lastly, let's talk about fertigation rates, because everybody wants to know how much to put in there and whatever. And this is another one of those things, you can't get too hung up on it. Like I said, we're doing what we call microdosing here. So if you do the right rates, you don't have to worry about burning anything. It does take a little bit of the more you do it, the better you'll understand it, and you'll get a feel, being able to look at your plants and tell what they need. Because when you give them this, they're going to pop within 2 days, and you're going to notice some results. But being able to, after you do this a few times, you'll be able to see, okay, my plants look like this, I want them to look like this, I know I need to give them a little shot.
And if you burn them, you know, you gave them a little too much. Fertilizer was one of them things, you know, we all used to take medicine and we thought a little bit do some good, do a lot of good. It's just the opposite with fertilizer. You want to start off at a low dose and work your way up. Because if you burn them, it's hard to work your way out of a burn. But if you don't give quite enough to them, you always come back and put some more to them and add a little bit.
So my general rule of thumb here, and I'm going to give a range here because it just kind of varies, and I don't usually measure it out just exactly. In this tank here with that 20-20-20, when I'm using the 20-20-20, I mix it with my Micro Boost, which I didn't bring any of that either. My plots are about 1,000 square feet, and I'll put 1 to 2 pounds in here per run, and I'll put 1 to 2 cups of Micro Boost in here per run.
If you have access to hot water or warm water, the 20-20-20 will dissolve better in a hot solution. If you don't have that, just put cold in there, and sometimes I'll take it and I'll shake it just a little bit, but it will dissolve in cold water, but it dissolves a little better in hot or warm water.
Yeah, so 1 to 2 pounds, and maybe when the plants are young, 1 pound per 1,000 square feet will do the trick, in a cup or so of that Micro Boost. That's all you need. Sit back and watch them grow. So, if there are any other questions about injection, fertigation, any of that, put those in the comments below. We'll be glad to answer them for you. We got a few questions.
Let's get to them.
Last week's show, and if we answer your question on the show, send us an email to custserve@hosstools.com, and we'll send you a nice little prize.
Coach Zig wants to know, great show on the cover crops. I have a plot that has some hard spots in it and some root knot nematodes. So I was thinking of using a daikon radish and mustard. Your thoughts?
I think that is a great idea. I'm actually going to, mix in some daikon radish with my Kodiak brown mustard. Where I have my ochre, I'm going to do the Kodiak brown mustard as a nematode kind of prevention, suppression deal. And I was thinking the other day, I said, you know what, I ought to go ahead and mix me some, the seeds about the same size, should be easy to mix them and scatter them. Mix me in some daikons there, should grow off pretty much close to the same rate, and I get double the value there, the nematode suppression plus the nutrient scavenging.
Yeah, I think it's a great mix.
Number 2 from Donald Starkweather says, there's been a lot of information concerning biochar. He's concerned about misinformation. Do you have any comment on its usefulness? Should he add it to his garden? He's new and he doesn't want to go in the wrong direction. I feel like we get this every few months. A lot of the people out there, some YouTubers that might not know what they're doing, they rave about biochar. Let's set them straight.
I mean, we've been to trade shows before and seen them really pumping out, talking about the biochar and all this. Let me tell you about biochar. Biochar is a huge chunk of carbon. Think of it this way. It's just a big sponge. So you got the biochar is a great product used correctly. You can put it into the soil to take any kind of pollutants out of it, or if you got an overload of a particular nutrient in there, you can draw some of it out. So you can use it in your soil to kind of store up nutrients or to pull nutrients or pollutants into. The analogy of it, a big sponge, is the best one I've ever heard. Just think about it as a huge sponge, and you put it in the soil and it's going to soak up that. Biochar in itself has no nutrient qualities on its own.
It's not a miracle drug
whatsoever. It's just a huge sponge. So if you got a real sandy soil, heck yeah, I could see where it could be used to store some of those nutrients. Or if you got a situation, they use a lot with pollutants. If you got a contamination area, they use a lot of biochar for that, to soak it up. You could use it for that. So it has its place. Is it a miracle cure-all? No. All right, I guess it's my turn again.
Yep.
Amber says, I know you've all talked about short and intermittent long day onions. I'm still a little confused at which I could plant in fall and overwinter. These versus those to plant in spring and summer. I'm in zone 7 in Kentucky.
Well, if you're in, I've only been to Kentucky a few times in my life, but if you're in Kentucky, from what I remember from my chart, you're going to be planting intermediate day onions, I believe. The other thing is, if you're in Kentucky, it gets too cold to overwinter onions. Just gets too cold there. The couple times we was there was a good bit of snow on the ground. Too cold for overwintering onions in Kentucky. You're not gonna, here's a good rule of thumb. For the most part, you ain't going, if you live in the intermediate day area, you're not gonna be overwintering onions. You're gonna wait till late winter to get your onions in the ground. So,
yeah.
Intermediate day, and no overwintering. Wait till late January, February, somewhere around there to get your onions in the ground. Last one from Jim Renderer says, can you explain the microgreens? Planting, growing, harvesting, and replanting. How are they harvested? Do they regrow? You got to replant. And can he do it with some 4-foot shop lights?
Sounds like a good video for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've done some work with microgreens lately, and it's been really fun. We're doing some things. I can't let the cat out of the bag right yet, but we got some great things coming on microgreens. What I've been successful doing is you got to plant them thick, keep them wet, you can grow them indoors, which is good. I've been experimenting with some different type of lighting situations. Most of your microgreens, cut and done one time and they're done. They don't come back. Exception to that would be some mixed greens. You might get 2 cuttings off that, but for the most part, most people, 1 cutting and they're done, and they always have some coming behind them. A good strategy is plant you some every 2 weeks, and you pretty much always got microgreens growing. I will say one thing about them. Once they get ready to cut, you don't have a huge window of opportunity to get them. So you kind of have to test a little pre-plant, to figure out exactly how much you need to keep you a steady supply of them. Grow them with grow lights. Yeah, you could grow them with a shop light. However, I think an LED light is probably better. And you need to place them pretty close to the plant to start with. And that's the reason I like the LEDs, because they're a lot safer and they don't put off as much heat. But we've got some great things coming in that spectrum in the next few months.
Yeah, our concrete has been poured, and our building it should be coming up in the next few months. We'll have a lot more room, and we can put together some microgreen kits. Got those container and fruit tree kits in the pipeline. Those are already on the site. They're not in stock, but if you want to be the first one to get one of those, you can go in there and put your email in.
I'll give you just a little bit on the microgreen thing. By January and February, we hope to have everything you need to be able to grow your microgreens.
All right. Hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. If you did, give us a big thumbs up. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button so you get notified every time we come out with a new video. And if you enjoyed tonight's show, check out these other 2 videos right here on drip irrigation and fertigating. And we will see you guys next time.
Take care.